This is a Hot Pie Original.
I mentioned vaccines and vaccinations to get on a cruise line or on a cruise. Did anybody follow? I don't know what, I'm not quite sure I get what Newsmax is. I guess it's just another like sort of Fox News 2.0 or MSNBC 2.0. They're all kind of the same thing. They're all echo chambers, right? That's what media is. You find your echo chamber and you stay in there as long as you can. So this rocket scientist, is Newsmax the one where the guy ran off the set? Is that Newsmax too? Remember the guy, he had the MyPillow guy on. Obviously they had been sued or had been threatened with a lawsuit. And this guy is doing all he can to not let that nut job, MyPillow guy, talk about election fraud. And then he throws down the earpiece and he runs off. I think it's the same. So Newsmax now has this genius. He's having a discussion with somebody about vaccinations. And I know there's somebody somewhere saying, well, he's got a point. Really? He's got a point. Think it through.
You know, one thing I've always thought, and maybe you can guide me on this because obviously I'm not a doctor, but when I've always thought about vaccines, and I always think about just nature and the way everything works. And I feel like a vaccination in a weird way is just generally kind of going against nature. Like, I mean, if there is some disease out there, maybe there's just an ebb and flow to life where something's supposed to wipe out a certain amount of people, and that's just kind of the way evolution goes.
Yep.
Vaccines kind of stand in the way of that. Do you follow what I'm saying? Does that make sense to somebody in medicine?
Can I stop here? You know what is a bad idea?
Reports that support what you're saying.
Okay, here's a bad idea. Well, we'll talk about this Ron Burgundy here in just a second. Because I'm sure if he were to show up for chemo, they would say, hey, look, buddy, that happens. Deal with it. You know what is a bad idea? First of all, the art behind this person makes me laugh. Two sailboats. If I were, this is all I can think about, because once you get past the host with a spray on tan talking about, well, I mean, what's the deal with this medicine stuff? What's the point? You're going to die anyway. Is the doctor, the MD that he's interviewing? First of all, I don't think it's a good idea that you do this show. If I were running the medical school and where you teach, I would say, let's not do that. You could say, well, that free speech. Shut up. It's a bad look. If you're in medicine, this is not a good look. And if you're a lecturer at a medical school, this is a really bad look. I think this is a bad move. If this guy wants to go off on his own, but you can't represent my medical school and have this discussion with this idiot on Newsmax. So yeah, I think the doctor from Texas A&M that is even talking to him needs to have somebody at XYZ medical school at Texas A&M, wherever that is. I don't even know. This is not a good look for the medical school at Texas A&M, in my opinion, not to mention the boats that are behind his head.
There's one by Neeson and colleagues from Boston and the Mayo Clinic that shows among vaccinated populations, the diversity of different strains is narrowing. So it's going to be fewer numbers of strains. Right now in the United States, we're about 40% UK variant or the Alpha variant, and we're about 30% now Delta, which is the Indian variant. They get progressively weaker, but the diversity is changing with vaccination. And I think probably the best way to think about it is vaccines really ought to be targeted to protect the highest risk individuals. A young person like you, if you got COVID, it's very easily treatable. You get through it. Natural immunity for sure is superior.
Okay. I know people are going to listen to that and go, well, Jeff, what did he didn't do anything wrong. Of course, he didn't agree with the idiot with the hair, who would turn away chemo and turn away any sort of treatment whatsoever. I'm sure he would never take his kids to the pediatrician, I guess. But I know the doctor didn't follow along. He didn't follow along with the knucklehead and say, you're exactly right. I don't even know why I went to medical school. It doesn't matter. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to go tell my kids, I talked to you and you had some big hair and nice spray on tan. I'm going to tell them tomorrow, get out of here. It doesn't matter. Leave this department. We're not going to teach you anything else because it doesn't matter, because Newsmax told me that nature's going to take its course. So your patients are going to die anyway. So who cares? I'm just saying, I think it's a bad look. He didn't agree with the idiot. He didn't. And he described variants, and I sounded like a doctor, and he is a doctor. This was not a smart move. You're basically saying, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to do an interview with a full-on anti-vax moron. And you're a medical professional. That doesn't look good. I would call him in tomorrow and say, look, Bob, whatever your name is, Fred. First of all, can you do an interview away from the sailboats? But don't do that, okay? It's, we're out trying to attract students who want to get into medicine, and it doesn't help us to talk to an audience that hates medicine. So maybe that's not a good forum. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I talked about the Delta variant. Yeah, you were talking to a moron who said, I don't quite get it, doc. Maybe nature should just run its course. It's not a good, you understand what I'm saying? I don't care if you believe that. If you want to believe like this knucklehead and you're never going to see the pediatrician or you're never going to get chemo if you need it, then that's your business. But if you're trying to teach in the medical profession, you can't sit there and be on this show. You can't. You can't be a medical school being interviewed in the setup. The audience itself, the source effect of the audience is, he's right. The Donny Osmond lookalike is right. I mean, listen to what this guy said. And imagine if you are a medical school professor and this is your setup.
I've one thing I've always thought, and maybe you can guide me on this because obviously I'm not a doctor, but when I've always thought about vaccines, and I always think about just nature and the way everything works. And I feel like a vaccination in a weird way is just generally kind of going against nature. Like, I mean, if there is some disease out there, maybe there's just an ebb and flow to life where something's supposed to wipe out a certain amount of people, and that's just kind of the way evolution goes. Vaccines kind of stand in the way of that. Do you follow what I'm saying? Does that make sense to somebody in medicine?
I wonder how that phone call he and his wife had. I mean, if he's married, listen, I got to take our daughter to the pediatrician. No. What do you mean, no? No. It just came to me. This is something. He's going to give that speech to the rest of his family or his mom who needs chemo. Mom, it just came to me. Nature needs to take its course. Done. There goes Ron Burgundy. Hey, every guy can relate to this. You're tired of wearing those baggy cotton shirts that feel like you're wearing curtains. There's a difference. In fact, I'm wearing the difference. That is the ultra premium basics from goodlifeclothing.com. You'll love the shirts. I've been searching for a long time, like every guy, for the perfect lightweight shirt that looks good if you're in pretty good shape. It's at goodlifeclothing.com. Check them out. You'll see the difference for yourself. You'll feel the difference for yourself. It's the perfect shirt for this time of year in Austin, Texas. So, two things. Go to goodlifeclothing.com. You get a 20% discount if you enter the promo code JeffWard20. That's goodlifeclothing.com. Enter the promo code JeffWard20 or stop by their store domain Northside. You'll love the difference. You'll feel the difference. It's the perfect fit for a guy that's in good shape. It's goodlifeclothing.com, promo code JeffWard20, or stop by their brand new store at Domain Northside. Remember, Facebook is the devil, that it hates Donald Trump, right? And social media hates the Trump crowd, and they're out to get him, and he's going to sue them, and the state of Texas is going to sue them, and all that stuff. Oh my gosh, it turns out that's completely opposite. Oh, they're going to sue, and they're going to tell the story, but the story is Facebook's biggest business, not biggest business, most dedicated crowd, well, that would be the Trump crowd. This is funny. Facebook executives, this is from Yahoo News. Facebook executives weren't happy when their own data showed it perpetuates a right-wing echo chamber. In other words, the biggest users are exactly what Trump said they're trying to stop. No, they're not. Actually, they're not. It says, despite claims by some Republican politicians led by former President Donald Trump that social media sites censor conservative views, Facebook's data makes it clear. The social network's best performing content is almost entirely right and far right-wing publications and personalities. Facebook's own measurement service, CrowdTangle, guess what they found? The top 10 list of most engaged pages. Yeah, I remember having a woman, I've interviewed her before. I don't know if it's too nerdy for a lot of people, but this is what she does. She studies conspiracy theories and propaganda in media, and she studies social media sites. And this is exactly what she's been saying, is that the most engaged and the most active people on social media are going to be those on the far right. It's going to be the MAGA hats. So now it turns out that's exactly what Facebook even found. Now, they didn't try to get rid of him. They don't want to get rid of him, even though I think they've said goodbye to Trump, but it doesn't stop people from engaging. So the data shows the top 10 list of the most engaged pages is consistently dominated by the likes of Fox News host Sean Hannity, commentator Ben Shapiro, and Christian evangelist Franklin Graham. Wait, which one is it? Is Facebook trying to get rid of them, or is Facebook really their most dedicated place? Among other metrics is what led Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg to tell Trump that he was, quote, number one on the social media platform in late 2019. So initially it says Facebook executives were divided over what to do with CrowdTangle and its data. Some Facebook executives are said to have argued for more data transparency, but others are said to have argued against the potential for more negative stories about Facebook to emerge. So in other words, when they find out the data that says that it's still the place where this audience wants to engage the most, they don't know what to do about that and how much of that to talk about. I mean, it really is. I find virtually no fault of Facebook. Right? I mean, Facebook is stuck getting blamed for everything, which means typically you're really not doing anything wrong. So they throw open the door. Guess who's going to engage the most? It's not that surprising. And I don't know that they've ever completely wanted. I know they ran off Trump, and I don't agree with it, but I don't think they really want to run the crowd off, because that's exactly who is engaging the most. I mean, think of you uncover this data. You're being blamed for, quote, censoring, when it turns out you're really not. So do you tell the public about that? This is their internal argument. Do you tell the public about that, or do you just keep quiet about it and let it keep happening? That's what Zuckerberg does when he shows up in front of Congress. And he does that ridiculous thing where he knows nothing's going to happen to him. He knows. And so he lets the Ted Cruzes of the world beat him over the head. And then he walks away and the same stuff goes on, because he knows that the data says that, hey, look, he really wants to say, Mr. Cruz, don't worry about it. The most engaged people here are going to be Donald Trump fans. So he gets to wink and then walk away and say, oh, boy, they were tough on me today. That's their own data. That's hilarious. You mean, what does that mean? That Facebook really hates him or really loves him? Which one is it? How about neither? And how about they just shut up and let people go ahead and vent all they want? Wonder if someone mentions that again. Now, see, what happens is, this is the objective part. Somebody hears that, somebody who's got that Pavlov's dog thing that says, oh, they're censoring me. You hear this, you do what? Well, if someone were to say this to Trump, hey, look, this is exactly what Zuckerberg said to Trump. Zuckerberg knew how to play Trump. He told him he was number one. What he meant by you're number one is you're the most engaged. The people talking about you are the most engaged that we have. You're number one. Trump is all giddy about that. And that's what he meant. Don't worry. You're number one. He's probably still number one.
ChefWardShow.com